and the people who love them.
Hello, this is The Thing About Cars, doing another special episode. We have at the table...
Becca.
And...
They call me Flip.
What is your full name, Flip?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the real... No, it's Thomas Lauer. I'm your comical sidekick's brother.
I was going to ask. Your name is?
Ben.
So we have the Lauer brothers at the table. How long have you guys been brothers?
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool. This is sort of a treat. I never thought that we would get the brothers on mic at the same time, but Flip did something really, really interesting lately that I think it would be cool to talk about. You went where?
I went to Cuba.
And why?
Why? Well, I had a friend who was going, and he asked if we wanted to go with him. Well, actually, we told him, we want to come with you. So we all went to Cuba. Really, it was kind of a diving trip for him, and he didn't go diving because our bridge washed down the river, but that's a whole story for another time.
Good grief.
Yeah.
All right, so Cuba, tell us about it.
So, a lot of people think about the old classic American cars when they go to Cuba, and yeah, they are everywhere, particularly in Havana, but you're just scratching the surface if you're just thinking about the immaculately maintained old Chevys and all that, because the car scene in Havana, and granted this is from a non-car person, I think is really fascinating. You've got brand spanking new MGs and Ladas, and that's alongside those old American rust buckets and the old Ladas and the old Moskviches, which are used as taxis a lot, the kind of Soviet-era cars. Did I hear you earlier, you were saying that's actually illegal for Cuba to import American cars to repair their old cars? It's parts cannot be... I was reading through the State Department documents. You cannot import car parts from the United States to Cuba. So that's a U.S. law. That's not a Cuba law. That's a U.S. law.
Well, how has that been affected by recent changes in the U.S.-Cuban relations?
I haven't really tracked the history of that. That's just what's in the current documents. It says you can't take them down there. So, and we were also looking through some of your pictures earlier. You've mentioned a variety of companies which are not American that actually have new cars in Cuba. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so those companies are from where exactly? Well, there's the MG, which is British, the Lada, Russian. What is it? It's Russian, yeah. I thought it was Russian, but I wasn't absolutely sure. I just wanted to defer to you. And Jiangling was one that I saw that I wasn't familiar with. I saw a pickup truck with JMC on the back, and I had no idea what that was. But, no Indian cars. I didn't see any Tatas in Cuba. No Tatas in Cuba? No. That's a shame. Yes. Mm. Now that we've just gone down the tubes here. No, I mean, having been to India a number of times and seeing the Tata company and the stuff that they do, it's... Yeah.
Well, to get back to what you said about the nice, pristine ones, they mostly are not, right?
A lot of them are not. A lot of them look like they're held together with, kite string and duct tape, and... The big thing I saw was a lot of the old American cars have one windshield wiper on the driver's side, and it looks like the blade needed to be replaced about 10 years ago. Good grief. And a lot of them have Chinese and Russian-made diesel engines in them, basically, just because that's what they can get. That's what they put in them. So it's kind of fascinating to see where the different parts come from, how they're all held together. An American shell of a car with a Russian engine in it. Exactly. And sometimes that shell is not really in fabulous shape. The majority of them are used as taxis, and people buy them for outrageous amounts of money to use as taxis. We rode down to the town of Vinales in a 68-year-old Chevy Suburban. Good Lord. I don't think, my tailbone is still telling me the suspension on that car hadn't been really worked on since it was built. I think I'm still recovering. But, it had a Mercedes diesel in it. So, a lot of people, the guy who drove us to Vinales is one of the many people who paid exorbitant amounts of money for their cars to use as taxis. He paid, I think he said, $80,000 for that 1950 Chevy Suburban. Amazing. And if you buy it as a taxi, you can only use it as a taxi. And interesting economics there. The government, of course, does take a cut of your fares. One of our drivers who drove us in an old Morris Minor, an old white Morris Minor, Ooh. Told us the fees the government takes are minimal. But if you can afford to buy a car, you can make a ton of money running it as a taxi. Because I was going to say, I mean, if another market, if another non-United States market can come to Cuba and say, hey, look, we have a cheap fleet of cars for you, what's to stop the average Cuban from buying something new in Chinese? Right. I mean, there are official taxi companies that run some of the newer Ladas and some of the MGs, I think. But The state salary, you're making probably about $40 a month. A guy with an old Chevy that he paid $25,000 for, he can make that in one morning, running people from Vedado over to the old city in Havana.
I'm sorry, I need to move.
It's time to go to Cuba. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take my cars down.
So he can make the
Yeah.
40 in one morning, not the 25,000.
Yeah, you can make 40 in one morning. I mean, the guy that's.
Oh,
I'm
man.
sorry if that wasn't clear. The guy who had the Morris Minor, he told us he paid $25,000 for it, and I mean, just taking us from Old Town Havana over to where we were staying in Vedado, kind of on the west side of the city, it took him maybe 15 minutes, and he made $15 off of that ride, which is a little more than you should pay. But I paid him a little extra because he took a lot of time to talk to us about the taxi business and the economics.
Well, how much does gas run down there, though?
That's the one thing I don't know right now. I meant to look that up this morning,
would
and I
really
didn't.
play into
Yeah, that'll
what
cut
are they
into-
really walking away with.
Yeah, that'll cut into it a lot, but
Well, in
I
India-
doubt it'll negate what they're going to make on a $10 on a 10-minute ride.
Was it polluted? Cuba.
Not so much air pollution as much as I could really tell. The biggest problem we had was drainage because we were there at the end of Alberto, and there was a lot of trash in the streets. And our local fixer who grew up there said there's kind of a an old Cuban habit of you get done with the beer or whatever it is, you just toss a can over your shoulder and go.
Well, and these are the comparisons that we're going to draw. I was going to draw with India in terms of, you're talking about this old medieval kind of living where you make, first of all, the average family makes as little trash as possible, and they literally throw it to the curb.
Yeah,
And what the beggars can't use and what the animals can't eat just sits there and dry rots. So
we saw a lot of that.
in addition to that, from a gas perspective, you have millions and billions of people in India. So you have all these rickshaws, these tiny little 2 and 3 banger engines. Gas is so expensive in India that they're actually cutting it with kerosene illegally.
Oh, wow.
And so you have horrible, horrible emissions. And there's so much crap in the air that, at least speaking for myself, when I go to the country, my lungs go, you want me to do what?
Yeah, the air pollution didn't seem to be a big thing. Otherwise, yes.
Okay, good.
Well, Cuba, I would think, would have a lot more cross breeze,
Yes, yeah, definitely.
which would have its pros and cons, because the humidity would be a lot more from the salt air, which would be corrosive.
Yeah. Where we were staying was right on the northern coast, so we were like blocks from the Straits of Florida. So
Yeah.
So the Keys.
yeah. Well, if you came out of my apartment and walked 2 blocks to the Malecon, the seawall, and you look north, the next thing you're going to see is the Keys.
Right. So I have to ask a non-car question. Is what they say about Cuban cigars true?
Well, I tend to enjoy them, but I mean, you're not going to, a lot of people won't be able to tell them from, one made in the Dominican Republic.
That is what I've heard, that there's really not a significant difference between...
They're still very well made, though.
Yeah.
Cool. We had a guy who looked like a Colombian drug lord roll some for us.
You know how I'm always talking about badging? It's the badging.
It's the badging.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the
Oh, yeah.
badging.
Although we bought bundles of, they're the ones that the average Cuban smoke every day. We bought a bundle of 25 of them for $10, and for a 40-cent cigar, it was really good.
Yeah? Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So you had fun, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And would you go back?
Absolutely. In fact, we've talked about possibly going back to take more donations for schools, particularly in rural areas, because there are a lot of schools that have just nothing. So,
For a car lover to go back, what would I, as a car loving guy, what should I be on the lookout for if I ever get to go?
everything. I don't know. I wasn't really ready for that question. That's actually a hard one. I mean, I would have to think about what you should look for from your point of view, but just keep your eyes open.
I mean,
everywhere you go, look
yeah.
and see what you can see.
But I guess the other way to ask that question is are there things I should not do? Like, are there questions I should not ask and say, hey, what's wrong with your Chevy? And then I'll be like, well, I can't get a damn carburetor for it. Or
Right.
something.
No, I don't think anyone would take offense at anything like that.
Okay,
No.
good.
Yeah. Ask away. They love to talk. I mean that in a positive way.
Sure.
They're social,
Yes.
personable people.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and I'm intentionally asking sort of a question. It's like Cuba being sanctioned the way they have been for so long, now that the sanctions are kind of maybe disappearing soon, I don't know who's sensitive about what. So anyway.
Yeah, I didn't really see a whole lot of sensitivity there. There were some young guys we were talking to one day who said that once they got in a little trouble with the police for talking to a tourist.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get the full backstory on that. But
Where'd you fly out of?
out of Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, direct flight from Atlanta to Havana. Delta goes down once a day.
No? Cool.
I'm sure there are plenty of others. That's just the one we used.
Ben, do you think we can go?
Oh, yeah.
Let's figure this out.
I need to renew my passport,
Yeah,
but
me too, actually. I think I'm going to check mine. Shall we go, Becca?
Sure.
We get the time off and the three of us just go hit it?
That'd be awesome.
I could use a real Cuban mojito, actually.
And I know the place.
All right. So on the board, Ben has written down a simple phrase, TV shows. Ben, tell us about this.
Yeah, it's kind of a sort of a roundabout. Maybe that's not even the right way to put it. But anyway, a little bit of background. At our house, we don't have cable. We have over-the-air TV. We've got one of those nice modern amplified antennas, dirt cheap, going into our big LED screen set in the living room. And so we discovered on all these over-the-air channels, we have, 3 or 4 of them that run old TV shows from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And there was one day when I was home on a weekday, kind of a home office day, and I had one of those channels on in the background, and they're showing old episodes of things like Emergency and Adam 12 and such.
Wow.
And sometimes they run, Columbo or Magnum P.I., shows like that. And you can see a lot of cool cars in them. Even just an episode of Adam 12, just watching the background as they're driving around, things you see that they...
I like to do that in older things.
Yeah.
Watch the background.
Things that aren't on the road anymore today. Last night there was a Columbo episode in which Roddy McDowell is driving around in a hardtop Ferrari Daytona.
Wow.
This was an episode filmed in 71. That was a current car then.
No kidding.
And fabulously expensive at the time, too. And I'm looking at it going, oh... and Columbo himself drives around in this beat-up old Peugeot convertible. It was maybe only 20 years old at the time, maybe less than that. But, for a car person who just likes to see things of a different era, check out the old reruns on those over-the-air channels.
Okay, so my question is older television better than newer television?
Oh, that's really subjective.
Depends on the show.
But I like it.
Yeah. I mean, there's the question is that maybe you just like what you grow up on, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I think someone was trying to reboot Magnum P.I, and my question was...
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Stop doing reboots.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in this thing that I saw, Higgins becomes a woman, right?
They're doing that with a lot of stuff
And
lately.
let me rephrase that. Higgins doesn't become a woman.
Yeah, I was about to
Is a
say.
woman.
I was like, from birth, or did he decide to do it later?
Higgins in this role is portrayed by a woman, and I don't know if it's like a direct reboot, like if she's actually Higgins and the new guy is actually Magnum. I need to pay closer attention to that, but it's like they go through like 3 Ferraris just in the preview alone. They wreck them. They totally wreck them and trash them because like in the show, the Ferrari would get hit by the occasional stray bullet.
Yeah.
But in this preview, it's like they're completely crushing the Ferrari and there's no going back. Yeah, and it's like looking at this preview, my first comment was, when did Bollywood take over Magnum P.I? Because it's just so over the top that I'm like, I can't even finish the preview. So,
And a little bit of trivia about the original Magnum. They had to remove the bottom seat cushion from the Ferrari so that Selleck wouldn't stick up out of the top too much.
he's a tall dude.
Yeah, he's about my height.
Yeah.
But nobody can see how tall you are.
Right, about 6'4".
So there's Comet TV and there's another one. There's like 2 different retro channels that you can get on the digital rabbit ears.
Yeah, we get Antenna, Cozy, Grit, and there's one other that eludes me right now. But Antenna and Cozy are probably our 2 favorites.
Cool. Yeah. And there's cool stuff out there. Jen, my fiance, has discovered Comet Television, which is old, super cheesy sci-fi.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
Post-apocalyptic movies, and it's just total camp funny. But it's good stuff.
It's one of the ones I have on my Roku. You can get comment on there as well. And I have a number of the cheesy B-rated movie channels. I love it.
Yeah.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Right. It's perfect background noise for whatever else is going on in the room. And some of it is just downright hilariously funny just because it's... Yeah. But... Yeah. So, what else shall we talk about? We got a couple minutes left.
I had a side comment earlier. Y'all had mentioned the Tata, and what it made
They
me.
didn't come in pairs. No, kidding.
But does it have the dual hump heads?
The what?
The dual hump heads we were talking about in another episode.
Right. We were talking about the double hump heads.
Sorry.
That were a GM feature in a particular Camaro, I think it was.
Yeah, I don't remember the whole thing, but it sprung to mind. But no, so the people that make the Tata, need to get together with Ford, who in England makes the Ford Ka. So if they get the Tata and the Ka together, we can have a Kata. I don't know.
The mind boggles.
Oh. Kata? Martial arts car? No, that's too funny. But Tata has been around a long time. They make a lot of different things. In India, they're not just a car company. They make huge industrial applications. They make big trucks. They do farming equipment and a bunch of other stuff, I think. They're not small. So
The Ka is pretty small.
Yeah. So you go to India, you can see some big Tatas.
I was kind of thinking it, and he went there.
I'm just setting them up so someone can knock them out of the park.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. But
And they own Jaguar now, too, I believe.
do they really?
Last I heard.
Interesting. I wonder if they're going to give Jaguar more creative control than Ford gave them.
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really seen a whole lot new coming from Jag lately.
Well, no,
so.
wait, would the people who make Tata turn the Jaguar into something like the Jar Jar?
Oh, no.
God.
Oh, please, no.
Kill us all now, please. No, okay, so when Ford did that thing back in whenever it was when they bought Jaguar, they bought, who else did they buy? Mazda?
Aston Martin. They never actually owned Mazda. It was just a close partnership kind of thing. Yeah.
So my Mazda has a Ford engine in it.
Right.
You can find Jaguars of a certain era, and parts inside the car will say Ford on them.
There was one Jag, I believe it was the X-type, little compact model they made that was basically just a reskinned Ford Contour.
Yeah. So, that just seems wrong for Jaguar.
And that one had some maintenance bugaboos, too. Apparently, it's one of the ones you have to remove the bumper to change the headlight, but somebody else told me that wasn't true, but I don't know. I haven't worked on one, so I don't know.
Right. So,
I have a question for you. Have you seen the Ford stamping on your engine? Does it say that it's a Ford engine?
I haven't seen the word Ford in my actual engine.
Well, there's a stamp somewhere that says which manufacturing company made it. And the reason why I ask is Ford, and maybe they've changed. I mean, I know I tend to have a monocular focus, but I've never really seen the accessories on the side.
Yeah.
So that was why my question, if it was that your car had a Ford engine, or if not Aspire, which car am I thinking of? Was it the minivan? No, the one you were saying you shared the engine with.
Yes, the Aerostar, I think.
The Aerostar.
Right.
If the Aerostar had a Mazda engine, or if that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, in fact, it's widely known that the drivetrain on this particular year model of Mazda is a Ford product. So, it's also one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, there's no space to play with. It looked like they jammed the engine in there
With a shoehorn.
and then everything else that's supposed to be attached to it is sort of an afterthought. So that's why replacing the condenser clutch on my car is a $1,400 job.
Compressor clutch.
That's what I said.
Oh, yes. You were going to mention something about this, the repair you just did.
Well, I want Ronnie to be here, so we can talk about it for 2 minutes.
yeah.
But,
We would need at least 3 minutes to laugh.
yeah,
So
let's save that for when Ronnie's here.
Okay.
definitely.
Between Becca and Ronnie, they just saved me a huge headache with this car, and I want to give them both credit where credit's due. Let's wait till Ronnie's back.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I guess that's it for today. Anything else?
Not off the top of my head.
Excellent. So you guys out there, thanks again for joining us. The thing about cars, will actually clearly, obviously, talk about anything as long as it's related to cars and Tatas.
I was going to say that.
I'm sorry.
That just leads to the guy in Havana who tried to sell me a Cuban chica, even though I told him my wife was back at the apartment 2 blocks away.
Well, it looks like the thing about cars has parked itself in the gutter.
Yes, exactly. Straight down the toilet.
On behalf of my inner 12-year-old boy, I apologize to everybody. So thanks for listening. As always, we welcome your comments and your suggestions and your concerns. Please find us at thethingaboutcars.com or on Facebook at The Thing About Cars. We love you guys and hope you're having a wonderful, safe day, and look forward to seeing you in about a week or so. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.